All right. So good morning. Apparently I woke a lot of folks up today, chatting with a few folks before we started the record here. And yeah, it's an early Saturday morning. But part of the idea is, we have folks all over the world. So, we're going to make it as even. So for some of these folks like Jack, I know it's not early morning for you, right? He's over on,
Good evening. Good evening from Cyprus. It is
yeah,
evening.
he's on an island in the Mediterranean. How awesome is that? Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so I did announce to the group we've secured a domain name, testgenius.com. So one of the things we'll need to do is get imaging in place of some sort. I did post just this morning on my YouTube the code review session, pairing session that Catalin and I did. I will get that right one of these days. Catalin and I did last night, which is probably why he's a little tired, because yeah, we were kind of pushing it a little bit on that on a Friday night, right? But we did get grade level selection to where I would consider it to be done. So we'll walk through that. Probably kind of quick. We'll just walk through the review on the GitHub itself. I did a review on HTTAT-6 display select assistance that Dylan did, and I don't think Dylan's on, but we'll run through that real quick, because I did a little more in-depth review on that one, and I tear people up when it comes to reviews. So let's be honest, they're going to be brutal at first, and that also reminded me that there's one other thing I need to do. So I've added 19, which is the add ESLint with rules. And when I'm talking with rules, I had a coworker that built me a custom set of ESLint rules that match what I want style-wise. Okay, I'm very particular about my style. Catalin has probably seen that, and many of you, as you push PRs up, you'll see that. And then the one big one I'd like to get through today is going through the build pipeline. It's not real difficult. I want to get something pushed that we can see is running in GitHub pages. Okay. And we may change that pipeline later. We may leave that one in place and build another pipeline, because we'll need a host somewhere that I can point the new domain name to. And yeah, probably will need help with that, because it's been years since I've done anything like that. And you guys have, in some cases, have done that relatively recently, I would hope, right? So let's jump into the GitHub and get through some of this. And if you have questions, this is a great time to kind of bring up those questions on things. And we still have the 2 PRs, good. And I want to look at 9 first. That's the, oh no, I'll look at 6 first. That's the grade level selection. That's the one that Catalin and I did last night. He's got a question from Jack, it looks like, on there, or just a comment. Okay. So one approval on it so far. I can tell you right now, if you wanted to approve, this code's good. We'll talk about it here. Okay. And I did remove the matte slide toggle from the app component. That's good. That was in there just to show that the material is working. Now we have material buttons running on it, so don't need that as much. We brought the grade level component in. We took out the matte slide toggle on the app component test, since the app component no longer has the matte slide toggle. But it does have the grade level select component that you access through it. So that was put in to get rid of some of the weird messaging that comes up in the unit tests. One of the things we haven't talked about is mocks. So we'll talk about that at some point. What happens is, and let me pull the code up so you can see this real quick. And yeah, not much to see yet. So hang on one second. I'm going to open the, here we go. So one of the things that happens when you run these tests, and that in particular was the app component, it's got the router. Okay. What's happening when it spins this up is it picks up this router, and I don't want to make changes. So it picks up the router, and the router is going through the routing, and it picks up the home component. And because it's picked up the home component, it's picking up the grade level selection. Okay. My thought would be on the home component that maybe a better way to fix this instead of injecting the grade level selector is a mock for home. Right? If we mock the home component and bring that in, then as it tries to display that home component, then it kind of bails out. It's not reaching any deeper in. Okay. And we haven't talked about the mocks yet. What we've had are the real basics in the helper on the spec tools. Brings up a point that, I want to build a couple of mocks and get those in. And maybe we'll do that in the next session or two, somewhere in there as we get time. So somebody remind me later to make sure I add that to a card. Oh, and real quick, I do have a hard stop at 11. I've got some things going on right after this meeting. Okay, so I won't be able to chat after today. Okay, so mocks, we need to get that in there to help with that cleanup a little bit. And it should speed up your tests just a bit too. We're not going to have 3,000 tests, so it's not a major factor. And then in our app module, we had to bring in the grade level component. We didn't need the slide toggle anymore, but we do need the map buttons. Okay. Probably could have left the map slide toggle in. I don't think that hurt. And we added some declarations. And one of the things I want to point out, and we'll see it on the next one, is we put things in here in alphabetical order. Okay. And some level of grouping. So like app component is one that's injected by default. Okay, so we just kind of leave that up at the top. So then down here on the imports, you'll see we have browser module, app routing module, HTTP client, and then we got a blank line, and then the map button module. We're gonna have this big long material components in there eventually. So having those alphabetized makes it much easier to see if one's in there that you're looking for. You don't have to detail read the whole list. I mean, this file right now is probably, it's 32 lines long. By the time this app gets closer to full-fledged, it's probably going to be closer to 120 lines long. Okay. So we'll make sure we account for that. He added a lot of good information in there. That's data. We added the grade detail interface. Perfect. And then in here, there's an indenting problem. I just noticed that we didn't quite catch, so maybe I'll put a comment on that. And even if you got the approvals, Catalan, if you want to fix that one, that's fine. That's just a minor thing. Now, I tend to group these, and I did mention this to Catalan, the basic, we're not doing anything with it Angular-wise, basic attributes, right? It's an attribute, possibly an equals, like here with color. It's an attribute equals, quote unquote, some value. That's your standard HTML attributing, however we phrase that. Then after that, I usually do the square brackets next. That indicates that we are reaching into the component at a JavaScript level. So what's inside those quotes, treat that like you're running something on the console, right? It's actually running JavaScript to get whatever value. We did find out that we had that, and I, reminded me that an ID can't start with a number. So we had like third, fourth, fifth, sixth. So we had to prefix those with ID. And then I always put the event type. So this is a click. I always make sure those are last. Okay. That's just my preference, and I will pick on that in a review. Okay. CSS, not a big deal here. Catalan and I did go through what the and sign means. If you haven't seen that, when you get a review with me and we get on and we record like he and I did, we'll talk about it. And it's on the recording on my YouTube channel if you want to jump back to it. But this is a lot easier and cleaner than each of those being a separate set of CSS, because this is SAS, so we can nest that. Makes it a lot easier to see that those are related. Okay. And we talked color and stuff like that too, and why we use the transparent there so we don't get a little jump wiggle when the thing's running. Let's see. Test. Okay, so this is the test that he originally put in, and he was nice and clean, and it's adjusted a little bit. We added the ID. It's nice and clean.
But let me get this out.
And he was honest with me in that he got this out of a tool, right? And that's fine. I don't care where it comes from. It was reasonably good test. I don't typically test in the DOM. Okay, so the second test is what I would have expected as a minimum. This is above and beyond. Okay, great to have that test there. I don't usually expect you to test what's on the DOM the way you would with React. Okay. If you want to do that, great. It's not going to hurt anything. My minimum expectation is things like the select grade level is a function that we pass a key, and the key gets assigned to selected. I just want to test to see if that works. Okay. I'm going to assume you poked at the DOM enough to know that it works the way you expect it to. Okay. Then we got the component here where we brought in the config, we brought in the grade detail. We adjusted that selector, got rid of the app dash on it. That's just my personal preference. You can leave it in. I think it looks really ugly when you leave those in all over the code. We have our component. We brought in our levels. We built this selected value that we can then query to see if the button is selected and change the color. And what we're actually doing is we're adding a class. Okay. If that one is selected and then it changes that button color, then you can see that it's been selected. Okay. We have to put the tag in somewhere, excuse me, so that it actually runs. In this case, right under the header on the home component. No big deal there, pretty exciting stuff. And then in the home component spec, we have to bring it in. Again, we might want to mock that at some point, in which case we can use that mock in 2 places now. I'm not going to worry about that yet. We're not quite there on it. And then the other one he and I discussed was background. He changed the background to a black and a gray for the color. And we brought it to a slightly gentler black and brought the color of the font up a little bit. So I have the code actually open right now, looking at our time, making sure we're okay. We get into the front end, and I just want to serve so you can see what this looks like. Okay, and then we'll take a look at the other one, which has a review on it. So Dylan, yeah, we're going to front you out on the massive review. Okay, I'm brutal with everybody, Dylan. It's not just you. That's the way I am. Okay, so we'll talk through what's in there. So here we have our buttons. Notice the change in font coloring and the background and that. There's no padding on the edges yet, no header or anything like that. But now we have this set up so that we click. And one of the things that was happening was there was a slight little jump because there was no border on a button that's not selected. Whereas a button that is selected has a 1 pixel border. So everything was jumping widthwise about 2 pixels to the right. And so by giving it that transparent border, well, it's got a border, you just don't see it, it's transparent, which then things don't jump around. Okay, it's a little thing. I had a boss that was insane about things jumping around, so I kind of learned that maybe I need to be careful with that too. And that's why we don't do things like, hey, let's make that font bold when you click on it, because you make that font bold and you're relying on your padding, it's going to jump. If we wanted to make that font bold, we'd fix the width of that button. So it's just a little bit wider and it has room for that to flex inside it. Okay. I don't want to fix the width. We want to keep this simple at this point. Great color scheme. Yeah, now that we have a name and somebody, I'm assuming you guys are going to play around with graphics and things like that since we picked a name. This HTTAT-6 board, Chess Genius. We have 219, so that should have been 20. Hang on, let me fix this to 20. I just realized I missed that there was a higher number later on. There we go. So the 19th, Test Genius. Let's come up with some logo stuff, horizontal and square ones that we can use, and maybe a fav icon, and play with some colors. And maybe next time we'll just jump in and see what all we've got from everybody. If you're not going to be here, send it to me and I'll make sure it gets in front of the team and we can discuss our options there and what that does to our application. Okay. So that's the core of what's in that review. And there's one minor change I just saw. So I can't approve and I can't request changes, but I can submit that review. Okay. So it's not going to block this if you don't do it. Okay. It gets counted as unresolved conversation. Typically, now this works the exact opposite as merging your PR. Okay. So Catalan at some point may fix that, or he may argue with me that it doesn't need fixed, whichever way he goes with it. When we reach a consensus on this is a case where the person that initiated should be the one to resolve. If you're in a time crunch, okay to resolve them all, close it out. Okay. if I made a comment on your PR, I would like to go back and look at your code and make sure that you made those changes. Okay. Make sure that we agreed on it. If you argued a point and said, no, that doesn't need change because, that's where the conversation extends, and, let that reviewer get a chance to look at it. Again, if it comes down to time crunch, don't stress on it. Okay. So let's take a look at the other PR. We're going to have to go through this one kind of quick because I do want to get to the pipelining stuff. Let's take a look at 9. And I did a review on this. Okay. So the review, as you can see, it's a long review. Oh, review. Okay. Not the worst I've ever done. Okay. This was, I think, it's like 17 open conversations or something like that. I've had ones that are up in the 30-40 range with first time 16 conversations that have to be resolved. Okay. 16 is not bad, really. It's actually pretty good. I've had much longer ones. Okay. Usually first time, second time, maybe the third are a little painful with me. Okay. And that's because I expect a high level of quality, and currently we don't have the linting in to fix that. When we put the linting in, you got to make sure you got ESLint installed on your VS Code. Okay, that'll look for that file and make sure that it checks things. Okay, so the mat slot toggle got removed. And now the first thing that tells me is Dylan probably has a merge master into his branch. There's no conflict yet. So it hasn't popped up and said anything on that. Because this wouldn't be there because it's already been removed. Oh, well, there we go. It isn't that he hasn't merged in. We have 2 different branches that have to be merged. So the first one is going to force the other one to have to connect those 2. Okay. So you will have a merge conflict at some point on one of the 2. It's first one wins kind of thing. Okay. So you are probably going to see some things like the other component will be in here in the app modules. So you have to make sure both of your components get into the app modules, and then both of those get into the declaration and imports. So those are all lined up straight. Let's see. You added some pieces to the config, which I made some comments on. I'm not going to talk about the comments too much, which is great. Just realize that when you merge these grade levels, that's going to be a nice long list instead of a short list like it is right now. So you have to make sure both sets of code get in cleanly. Assistance levels, you created that, so you don't have to worry about that. These assistant components, you shouldn't have any impact on those in merging the 2 together. I did make a couple of comments, and one I think that I want to point out is you called this selected level, and I think on the other component that Catalan's working on, he's got it called selected. So let's kind of keep that naming the same. Okay. Minor thing, but it's going to change a few things around your code. And I did comment on all of those. He's got a test that changed, and I'm kind of a stickler for things being alphabetical. Okay, it's easy when things are short not to worry about alphabetical, but man, when that list gets longer and longer, it's really annoying having to go back and readjust the alphabetized list when you got like 50 items on there all of a sudden. Okay. So that home component HTML is probably your second one in here. And I made a comment about merging master. I know you didn't merge master yet, but you've got the assistant selected. It's underneath this list. I think on the other, on Catalan's, his component is here on line 2. So your 2 should probably be right next to each other. The only other thing that I noticed, and I don't think I made a comment on it, was in your HTML. I don't know, is it in? Yeah, it's in the components HTML. You had this header, which I don't think we're going to need. Okay, we might need some descriptors in there later, but I think we could leave that out for right now. Okay, because we didn't put that in on Catalan's version. So just the buttons is enough. If you really want to get fancy, one of the things that I don't think I put into it, since we still have some things that need adjusted there, if you really want to get fancy, I keep talking about crawl, walk, run. And at the root of the project, there's a crawling baby, pedestrian, and a running. So crawl, walk, run icons that could be added in there with those buttons. And there is a way with the Angular material to add icons onto buttons, add images on. So if you really want to get fancy, that was my intent long-term, was to use those. I didn't add it to the card. I'm not going to require it, but if you want to touch it, that's fine. Okay. So we have an application that builds and runs. And part of what I wanted to get to was this build pipeline. And I'm going to step through on that one at this point. Kevin, we're going to move yours back to code review because you're still in code review. Okay. Build pipeline. So not much in here. Okay. Right now we're assuming front end only, so we can push it to GitHub pages using GitHub Actions. I don't know if we need the hashtag navigation anymore. There's a new pattern that I saw, and I bookmarked it here, that he's able to do it without, and it's actually a GitHub, and so we can just kind of steal from him. I'm attributing it, it's in our document. Okay, and this is a really cool repo, and this is Rodrigo, it's in the cart, you guys can look it up. And it's an Angular 15 project, Git node, CLI, and he talks through everything he does. And it really isn't much exciting here because he's actually creating the repository and the README, and installing Angular is really boring stuff at this point. Making sure it builds and the tests run and that stuff. And then he creates this workflows GitHub pages YAML file. Okay, here it is. Okay, we're going to copy that. And let's bring that into our project. Okay, so this is HTTAT-6. So I'm going to bring this up and I'm going to open a new branch. And let's do a quick fetch origin. I always like to do that first. Create new branch, feature slash 3, GitHub, GitHub, pages, 9. I'm going to create this off of main. It's not going to impact the code you guys are working on at all. Do a quick publish so that branch is up there. And then we're going to open our VS Code. And lots of changes will disappear because we're in a new branch. And let's close all this down, get it out of our way. And I want to raise my font size up, right? So if you guys can see stuff, and I don't need it running at the moment. What I do know is I have this workflows, and that was called GH pages, I think, in his scroll up just a little bit. GH pages. All right, so create a new file. And then naming of the file doesn't matter. It's that it's in the .github folder, in the workflows folder. That's the key. Okay. So we're going to paste this in here. We'll take a quick look and make sure it fits what we want to do. Okay. So it's GitHub pages is the name of it. And on a push to main, which we're using main, that's fine. He's spinning up Ubuntu. He's doing a checkout. Now, if we come, I want to pull up our on pull request to the side over here. Because one of the things I want to take a peek at is our versions. Now, I thought his versions were a little out of date. So checkout has a v3. And he's setting up node. And he didn't specify a version. Oh, he did. He specified 16, which is fine, except I'm looking at this like, can we match some of what we're doing over here? Well, yeah, let's make ours match a little better, right? So our strategy, I want to name it to, just because I know that it doesn't matter too much, but this doesn't matter too much on the name, but I want to match the pattern across. Okay. So we're using that node matrix strategy. And then in our steps, we're doing a checkout. And then our steps, we're doing a set, we just called it node. And this is where this is part of the naming. Okay, so we get that, and matrix dot node version. And then our actions on the setup node v3 with node version, and this is where we grab our matrix. Okay, so I'm going to copy that as we use that again. That way we get the Control B instead of Control V. Bravo instead of Victor. There we go. Okay, so this now matches what we're doing over here. Okay, actions cache. Do we need actions cache? Well, it's probably not going to hurt. We're using we're using it over here. We can use it over here, I suspect. Okay, speed things up a little bit. Now he does the install, run, test, and build separate, which we don't have a build, but we have everything else down in here in this main test. And I'm okay with running it this way. We just have to make sure we have all the same pieces. Okay, so he has an npm install as opposed to the CI, which is fine. Okay, this is a full build. npm run test. I have to change it that way. And then our build prod. Let's do a quick check on what we have. Okay, so things are might be a little different there. And this is going to be in our package JSON. So let's open that up. Let's bring that over here. And so what we have is we have a build and a build watch. He has this build prod. Okay, and one of the things I know from the Angular 15 version is build by default builds a production version now. So we don't have to tell it prod specifically. Okay, so we do have an npm run test. We have an npm run build. The npm install is the standard node modules install. And then deploy. Deploy is the one that we don't have over here. So we've essentially done all the same stuff here, except for we need this working directory, most likely. Okay, which is that's the case for doing these slightly separate, but I think we could do the working directory separately if we want to. And I think that's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But we could combine these and run this kind of a pattern that runs the build test run. Okay. The deployment's kind of cool because what it does is, this piece iris is one that I've used before. It's the GitHub pages. So what it does is it takes what's in the build folder, our distribution folder, and we have to find out our name first, and it creates a new branch with what's in that folder. And the branch is named GH pages, which we then can go into our settings and say, hey, use the GH pages branch. Okay. It's really kind of cool. The only new one to me is I've never seen this if successful. What it's doing is it say, hey, did it install, run the tests, and build without any failures? Which we should be able to do at this point. Okay. The one we haven't done, and looking in here in our front end, we don't have a build folder yet. We've actually never run a build. We've run a build watch. We've never run a build. Okay. So just to make sure everything's working right, I'm being source. There we go. So first thing, I don't want to do an ng test. I want to do an npm run test. I want to do it the way we're going to run it in there. I don't need the npm install. Everything's already there. But I want to do the npm run test. I want to make sure their tests run and the test pass. Okay, because the worst is you push up a branch only to find out your tests are failing, right? So as I pointed out to Catalan last night, I always rerun this stuff a couple of times before I'm pushing up, just to be sure. npm run build. There I can spell, believe it or not. This one won't take much longer than the npm build watch, okay? But it's actually going to create a folder and dump it in there. And part of why I want to run this is, number one, I want to make sure it works. And number two, it's going to give us that full path inside of it that we need for here, except there is going to be a variation because right now we're saying dist, but it's actually off the root. So it's going to be front end / build and whatever that is. So it did build and it built successfully. So we now have this distribution folder. Notice it's protected by the git ignore. Okay. HTTAT, that's cool. That's a nice short one. But this is in the root of our project under front end dist, because you have to go from the root of the project. And since we have a front end separate in our project, we have to make sure we include that as well. Okay. I don't know why we need to enable Jekyll, but I don't think it's going to hurt anything. I don't know. I think we could probably take it out. But yeah, let's take it out. I don't know what it is. Yeah, let's leave it in. Right. Doesn't hurt. Okay, so now we've tested it. We know it runs. We know the tests work. And this should work. In theory, it should do what we expect it to do. We've made changes. odds are really good it's going to break things. Okay. And this is one of those cases where I pull executive privilege and we actually mash things through. Okay. So let's pull up our branches here. So we're creating GH pages YAML. I'm okay with that as a commit title. I'm going to push. I'm going to create pull request. Clean this up. And this is HTTAT-6 GitHub pages pipeline. Generate the GH pages. And if we put the backticks around, this is like code wrapper, right? Generate the GH pages branch to be used with GitHub pages settings. And this is a new feature. We can't test this with a unit test. Okay. So test, and I'm going to put something in here. Testing. This is live in GitHub. The only way to test it is to run it. Okay. To merge the code. Hold and retest it. No new bugs that we know about. Existing unit tests work. And any dependency changes have been taken care of. Good. Great pull request. All right, so we have a pull request. It still hasn't done anything yet. It hasn't triggered yet. Checks haven't completed, so I gotta wait for checks to complete. And I'm gonna force the merge, okay? Since I own it, I can force the merge. With branches, this is the only time I would consider forcing a merge. Okay, with pipelines. This is the only time, just because every time I've set one of these up, it's usually, I've never had one, this might be the first time, I've never had one run perfectly the first time. There's always some weird little glitch that you didn't account for. Okay, and assuming that little glitch, I want to go as fast as possible to get this through. We do have to wait for this PR to run, and we can watch it. Or sorry, the branch piece to run, so it's running the unit tests right now. Okay, so it's already cached, it'll do the post cache and all of that. And I don't know why it won't let me see the tests. That's really weird. It usually lets me click on it and expand it, but it's running, it's at 50 seconds and it takes about a minute, 10, minute 20. So we're pretty close to being done and I can stop jabbering. There we go. Oh, it's actually running the tests. Yay. And
The jabbering was actually pretty helpful because I was seconds away from merging my own thing.
Okay. All right. So post cleanup, post checkout. Good. We passed that. And so give that a second and that'll pop up. Might have to refresh. And no unresolved conversations. All checks have passed. So now I can merge this pull request, confirm the merge. Now, I'm hoping the pipeline will run. It could be that we have to, it might be the next one that merges in and it triggers the run. It did. Okay, it's merging. Okay, so this is, see, GitHub pages. That's the one we committed. So we can actually see that. This is a whole new pipeline that we built. That's running. Checkout, caching. There's no caching, so that's going to go really fast. NPM install. So it's going to do the install, test, and build separate. Remember, we built those separate. We can see them in here separately. Okay. It's running our tests. And let's see, let's pull up the, so right now we're in here, install dependencies, run tests and build, right? Install dependencies, run tests and build. The deploy is the cool one. That's where the exciting stuff happens. Okay. It's going to run our 7 tests, which we know we're going to pass because we just saw them pass. Here's the build, which we tested manually on our machine. This is one of the possible failure points because we're now running it in Ubuntu, not on my Mac. You know, always works on my machine, right? Doesn't always work on somebody else's. This is one of those scary places, which it shouldn't be too bad. You saw how long it took on my machine. It's probably going to take about the same amount of time here. We should probably be in the 30 to 40 second range, actually much faster than that. Yeah, we had a fatal error in the deploy. Okay, don't know what the fatal error is. We're going to find out. Okay, this is why you do these. Push, commit, or tag. Permissions denied by the bot. Unable to access the Git returned a 403. So it created a commit. It did what it's supposed to do, but then I got a permission denied. And it should have pulled the secrets GitHub token. I don't see anything in there that would have been a problem. So
Just
this,
talk over him, Katie. It's okay.
Yeah,
So
because you were taking it from somebody else's code base, does the secrets match like the way that you have it set up in the code base?
well, actually, that's the thing. If you look at what he did here, he never set up any secrets. Okay, that GitHub token secrets is a pretty standard
Okay.
one to use. It's a common one. So if we look in our on pull request, we do that in here. I thought we did that in here somewhere. Oh, we didn't. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we didn't do it over there. I thought we did. But we had talked about that one. I don't know. Let's go back through his documentation and make sure. Maybe he did set it up in this vast pool of stuff. I didn't see it. Okay. So we created the account. He's creating a brand new account on GitHub. Okay. He's creating a new repository. Good. A new repository, creating Angular, just a basic Angular install. He did change his build and test a little bit. To build that production. Oh, that's one we, this might be a problem we need to account for. I forgot about that. Okay, so that's one we have to account for, I think. I don't think that's what the problem was, but we do need to account for that. We did a run npm test headless, which we're already running it headless. He did the npm start, spun it up to make sure it worked. He built it, npm build prod, which we did. Then he created the file, touched it. Synchronize the application on the GitHub repository it was created in. After I don't know what he means by synchronizing, but my assumption would be that he merged it. All right, so yeah, I don't see anything in there where he's setting up those GitHub tokens. The GitHub tokens are normally something you don't worry about. Now, however, there was one piece I saw in our build that would be wrong. And that was in the package JSON. So we have this npm build, and we need that command in there. And base href is an interesting one because this is going to be our username, which in my case is, let's open this up and then open that up. Look at the right one. So it's Bob-Foil. And then the project name, this is how it builds the GitHub Pages page, right? It's going to be github.io/how to take a test. Not hot, no. Take a test. Now, what this does is, it's just a simple little thing that it does in the build process. It takes the source index HTML file, which you don't work in very often, and it changes this base href. So then all the files know to look at this path and not the /root. The /root actually looks for GitHub.io, not Bob-Foil at GitHub.io. Okay, it drops off this part and it drops off this part, and you end up with all kinds of errors. Okay, that's an error in the build process. That was my fault there. But that doesn't explain the secrets problem. I still don't know the Jekyll thing. So let's go take a look at the pcyrus action GitHub pages. Okay. And we can leave there. I've got the documentation on that. And we're going to go here. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, just took a slash out. All right. Let's go here. Let's look at the actual existing GitHub actions. Okay, we can view it on the marketplace, which probably is cleaner and easier to read in the long run. And here's your basic deploy pcyrus v3 with secrets GitHub token. And okay, so this is a GitHub action to deploy your GitHub pages, blah, 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 blah. We'll deploy public directory to the remote GH pages branch. Okay. So the dot slash is the one I don't see in there, which shouldn't be a problem. For newbies, note that GitHub token is not a personal access token. GitHub Action Runner automatically generates a GitHub token secret to authenticate in your workflow. Okay, so it's automatically generated. We don't have to worry about it. So this is a public repo. So the GitHub token with HTTPS is unnecessary. Okay, personal tokens and deployment keys. Yeah, we'd have to provide them. Okay. So we should be okay on Ubuntu. And then options, tips. So here we might see something on. I was hoping we'd have like a frequently asked questions or something like that, but you can see we didn't, she had that if on the hrefs head main stuff. We don't need that. That's a build for Hugo. So let's go take a look at our code again and see what we can fix, and maybe we'll just try and push it again and see what happens. I'm going to take out that Jekyll because I don't know why we needed that. And the publish directory went with a dot slash. So let's do that. That's the only real changes I see. And our dist that builds is inside the front end, inside dist, HTTAT, and that's our assets. Okay. So that should have been what's built, and everything should be fine here with that GitHub token. Maybe it's just the first time it ran. I don't know. So let's push up some changes. Adjusting. See if well, let's just say adjusting 1 to number 1. I always put these numbers on because I like to see how many times it takes me. It never works the first time. I told you that, didn't I? Good pull requests. This is why I force the pull requests. Okay, I don't care what the name is at the moment. We can put in the HTTAT. What is this? 3. Okay, we'll put that in. I'm not even going to adjust all that content because we could end up doing this 20 times, and I don't want to retype that every single time. Out of date with the base branch. All right, so we did merge something in. So let's come over here. We'll do a quick fetch. And while that's running, I'm going to bring up my code, and let's open a terminal. And we'll do a git purge master main. Oh, fun. Okay. Smiley face. Okay. Did somebody merge while I was on this? Control X.
I did not merge, but I did also bring in the changes that you put into to my pull request. So it might be still dealing with that a little bit. It just finished though.
No, if you're still on that branch, it should have made a bit of difference. So okay, so I got that. It made that work change. So something pushed pulled. I'm not too worried about it. All right, so that pushed it up. It's got to run its checks. We can merge it without the checks being complete, but I do like to have the checks complete. Although we're at 15 minutes. Caching, testing. Oh. That. It's good forever. 30 seconds takes forever, right? Let's go over to our actions. So we should now have another merge pull request. This is still running the on pull request code. We're looking for the GitHub pages code. So this one just started. This is the one we need to see. So everything worked up to the deploy, and that's the one that I don't know, we might have to do a little digging to figure out why I may not be able to complete that on this call, since we have now 14 minutes left. All right, running tests. Keep your fingers crossed. Any questions on what we're doing at this point? Have I lost anybody yet? Okay. I'm trying to go slow, but I'm trying to go fast at the same time. I'm trying to get through these processes. But I'm trying to go slow enough that you still understand what's going on. Okay. 7 tests, so nobody merged code. We're generating the bundle. There's the build base ref, href that we needed. And see, that'll break the local build, so we might have to create a prod build that we merge into this one. We got that fatal error again. So it was able to create the commit. Push origin GitHub pages. So when it goes to do the push to origin, that's when we're getting denied. So let's copy that part. And this is Peace Iris GitHub Actions GH pages. So Peace Iris. Peace Iris Actions GH pages. Fatal. Let's see what we got there. So GitHub push action issue, permission denied. That looks familiar. Trying to push changes, see some errors. Bot unable to access. Requested URL return 043. Okay, so he's using a different push action tool. So this is not the one we're looking at.
Yes, if the branch is protected. Though.
Is the branch protected? Trying to push PR branch. What's on that? GitHub token permissions. Something is restricting permissions. Settings actions. So let's look at our settings actions. Okay, because we can come back to this. We're in our settings. Let's go into our actions. Actions, general. Allow all actions, reusable workflows. Artifact log retention.
Require approval for first time.
Fork pull request workflows from outside collaborator, but I'm not an outside collaborator.
But is it the bot a first time contributor and he's trying to push?
Is it down below in the workflow permissions there, like the read and write?
Yep.
I'm thinking
Yeah.
it might. Read repository contents and package. Yeah. Okay. Now comes the fun part. Now we got to figure out how to trigger our code to rerun when we haven't changed anything. And
Spaces.
there are a couple ways we could do this. Now we've changed permissions. We can rerun. We don't rerun all field jobs. I guess it doesn't hurt to rerun. So GitHub pages, a new attempt to workflow will be started, including all field jobs dependents of GitHub pages. Oh, so we don't want to rerun the fail. We want to rerun, let's just rerun all. So that it rebuilds everything. I've never used that rerun before, so we're all learning something new today. Whoa. There we go. Wow, wow, what was that? Oh, that's a node 18, which we don't normally see. It's normally collapsed. Checkout's normally collapsed. Cache is normally collapsed. Installing dependencies. That usually runs, but I usually see this debug. So that must be new if you're rerunning a workflow. I've never rerun a workflow, so I haven't seen that before. This gives us a lot more detail. I like that we get to see exactly what's going on. Come on, deploy. Fingers crossed. Absolutely could be right that we blocked it with read-only access. I'm guessing as much as you are on this, so thank you for that. Build. Here we go. Come on, build. It's kind of a cool purple color.
No whammies, no whammies.
I've never been so invested in a build.
I've never had this error before, but you know, I don't usually dig in that far. Okay, build worked. Deploy.
Got past.
Deploy. We got past the deploy. Completed
Yes!
successfully. Yes.
Katie with the save.
So it shows this has failed. But that's okay. Because what I want to see now that that's run, we should have a new branch somewhere. Let's look at all branches and look at that. We have a GH Pages branch. And if we go to that, this should be just that dist folder that we saw on our local. Look at that, an index HTML. Okay. And if we go look at this file real quick, we don't normally dig in here, but what you'll see, oh, it did change the base. It should change the base, but that's okay. We'll see what happens. If it, you know, we may have to manually adjust something in there, but I'm not worried about that too much. Okay, so we have this. Now we want the GitHub pages. And we want to deploy from, we are deploying from a branch, and we're deploying from the GH Pages branch. And save. And so it should now be deploying somewhere along the way. I don't know what all this is. That's new to me. I don't use the custom domains on that one. So we should see, oh, excuse me. Oh. Pages build and deploy. Okay, I'm not worried about that. The first time takes about a minute or two. And I see, Catalan, you pushed something. Yes, cool.
No, just bringing in the changes.
Okay,
Doing too much.
Yeah, and yours is going to spin off all these things again too. You're going to get the on pull request. You're going to get the GitHub pages when it merges and you've merged. So this will do a very quick update of those GitHub pages again right after this one's done. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm waiting for that first one to finish because the first one is the one that usually takes the longest. We got a green. That's good. So we'll go back to the root. And we're not seeing, we should have seen, there's usually a thing over here, which I'm not seeing. Interesting. Maybe I don't know. The first time takes the longest. Always has, always will. Okay, so it's deploying, it's deployed. But notice we have this new path over here that it usually gives us that on the main page, but since it's the first time, and we're not working right. So let's inspect and see what we get. We got 5 errors, and it didn't pull the polyfills from the right place. So what place did it pull them from? That's the key, okay? So if we come in here in a network, we didn't get anything, let's refresh. And it's probably gonna error on us again. Yeah, here we go. So it's looking at Bob Forel GitHub.io/main. So that build didn't work right. Okay, since Catalan's merged his in, let's jump in here. Did somebody post the attendance and all that in the chat?
I did earlier.
Okay, I haven't even looked at the chat yet. So let's take a quick peek here. And what we need really, I could care less about that, this part of it, because we can cheat this. Okay, that didn't work. And I thought it had quotes around it, but let's take that out of there. Okay, let's just leave a normal build. And I'm going to modify directly my index HTML because this is what I usually do. Oops. Put that in there. So now it knows the BHHref has that how to take a test as a part of it. Okay. But that also means that now, guess what we have to do? We have to do a couple of things. Right? Since we have code got merged in, we got to make sure we get that included. We got to update the package JSON. That's good. We'll push that. And we're going to refetch that origin. And since we had a merge, we're going to do that merge main again. Well, look at this. Yeah, you should put nice, clean things in, but I'm in a hurry. 4 minutes left to make this work. Oh, I'd like to turn off. And so we got that merged. And we're going to push those 2 commit changes back, create a new PR. Other than that being capital, that's okay. We're going fast to get this through. And force confirm merge. All right. Now we should see a whole bunch of actions firing off. The merge, the on pull request, The 6 on pull request made it through just fine, although it didn't do a page build deploy. Interesting that it didn't do that. But I've merged your code into mine on this one. So here's the GitHub page build that we normally have been watching. That'll finish eventually too. These are on separate little Docker container. I do believe they're Docker containers. I need to research that one of these days and see. But, you know, we can come in and get a rough idea of timing. Been running for 37 seconds. It takes about a minute to a minute 20. Could take longer. I've actually seen them take significantly longer. But always kind of fun to hop in and watch the numbers. You could watch the whole build, but, you know, we have 2 minutes left, so.
This Bob guy keeps merging broken code into our code base. I think we need to talk about it.
All right, so we don't need that. We don't need that. Kind of need that. Don't need that. Don't need that. Shouldn't need that. Okay, that completed. And come in. Yep, get a page, whole thing ran. And let's go back. And these are all the GitHub page runs. Interesting. And total actions, what do we have? Okay. I'll go back here because there's usually a thing over here that says you've got deployment thingies, and I don't know why that's, oh, maybe I could have turned that one off. So let's go out here and see if anything's changed. Empty cache hard reload, so it's not keeping my local files. And we got more errors. So it's still trying to pull those from the wrong place. And this is why sometimes you need the hash router. And I don't think we have enough time left to figure out exactly what happened there. Because it did build, it did deploy, it is deployed to the right place. It's just not working right yet.
Do you think it has to do with that base href that you mentioned?
I'm positive that's what it has to do with. Yes. And look, the base href didn't change. It's still a /. And I know we changed that in the code, didn't we? Let's make sure it made it into this branch. This should be under front end. This should be under source. Should be under index HTML. It did not make it in. Why not? Wait, did I not save and push? All right, my wife and kids are going to be very disappointed in me in that I'm not going to be done at exactly 11 o'clock because I want to see this get through. You guys need to talk to me about saving files. I'm good at that, especially when I start moving quicker. Close that out. Commit. Merge, merge, merge. And let's go look at our actions. We're running it, and our last build and deployment took 29 seconds. That's not bad. 53 there. Okay, so build and deploy. But the merge took a minute 23. So we're going to take about 2 minutes all total. So it's going to do the merge, then it's going to do the build and deploy. The bot runs the build and deploy. Okay. So 2 minutes total from the time this one started. Counter. So about 30, 40 seconds after this one's finished, we can check our page. If we keep our fingers crossed, yeah, that was my thought immediately, was it probably has to do with that base href, but I thought I was smart enough to save the file. And watch, I'll have injected some weird character or something, hit the wrong key previously and didn't look at it close enough. So maybe we should take a quick look at it just to make sure. Yeah, so that looks right at the moment. We didn't inject anything else accidentally and make this not a normal HTML page, so that's good. Okay. Minute 14, so that's done there. So we should have a new action just kicked off when this one updates. The build and deploy, and that one takes about 20 seconds or so. This is cool because it's spinning off other things. So they're reporting the build status and the actual deployment. That's the one that takes a little bit longer. And you can go in and watch these. They're kind of cool. So it deployed, completed. That took a grand total of 6 seconds. Then we'll come back here and we got that deploy. I can figure out why it's not showing on our main page. And hey, look, that looks really good. What do we got going on now? So we should have in our header, still have the base href static, which is what's killing us here. Maybe. There we go. Hey, look at that. It's an old version, but it works. Not quite sure how we didn't get other stuff in, but you know, that's okay. We'll figure that out. We got one error on the console. Oh, wasn't able to get the mock tests. Oh, assets. Okay, so our asset path needs modified slightly to account for that. And that might be why we didn't get anything displayed, because we're looping over an empty array right now, because it wasn't able to pull that mock data. But that should only have impacted one of them. It shouldn't have impacted all. So we should have had the other components in here. You know, I'll have to take a look at what I did. Maybe in one of our merges, something got wonky on us. So we should have now, take a quick peek here real fast. Our core constants should have, nope, it doesn't. So somehow, Catalan, I lost your branch changes when they came over. And it probably had to do with a get merge. Okay. I will make sure those get back in. Okay, I screwed this up. I'll make sure that those get back in. Dylan, if you want to get yours adjusted and ready, request a re-review of me and I'll make sure that gets through. Okay. I'll make sure that Catalan's code gets in, that this looks right at some point. Oh, this looks right at some point. Yeah, that's the one that was on the right place.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
these changes were just waiting to be merged, and I was waiting to the end of this call to do so because I was taking up too much processor.
So you're merging now.
Yeah, it's running the test right now, and then I'll merge.
So your code may get merged and may get pushed over to there. The one we'll have to adjust is in your. Let me go in and take a quick peek and tell you where. So you might want to push another small. Well, actually, it would be it's in the API service code. Yours isn't using the API, and Dylan's isn't either, right? So the only fix is mine on one of the earlier sets of code. And it's going to be in this, I'll fix that. So it's going to be the API handler service. So here where we get the URL, it's getting the URL, but the problem is it's getting the URL in constants. This endpoint needs to have that how to take a test before assets. I think that's all we need to change to make that work right. The problem is that's going to mess up the local. So I'll have to create a modification for it. So one of the tools that I've used in the past is a way to tell which environment we're in. So we'll have an endpoints that has settings for different environments. So in your local, it'll be /assets. In GH pages, it'll be /how to take a test /assets. If we deploy to another location for our new domain to point to, it's probably going to still be /assets on there. So we can differentiate our local, our GH pages are, and you know, the GH pages is easy enough to look for because did it ever give me that deployment thing? That bugs me. That should show us that.
So I'm good to merge this now?
Yeah.
All right.
In the page deployment, so this deployment address is usually shown. But what we have to look for here is essentially I have to search for the string GitHub IO. I look at that base path. So if the base path is Bob Forrell GitHub IO, we use one route. If the base path is localhost, we use another route. If the base path is, what's our new name for this? I'm blanking on it. Right. testgenius.com, we use a third route. So we can specify our routes based on where our deployments are. And the nice part in how we set things up is that's all going to occur. All that adjustment, our config will have the 3 routes somewhere in this endpoint pathing. Okay. Our service can just take a look and figure out where we are. This get URL gets a little more complicated. Based on where we are, we change which endpoint we grab. Make sense? So I'll make sure all those changes get in. Let me make a quick note. I'll put it on Saturday. So GH pages, routes, and Catalan, your code is merging, so we should see that here before too long, right?
Yeah, it should be merged right now.
Should be merged. So we should have a new deployment. Let's refresh. Oh, it's deploying right now. So that, I mean, you saw it can take 10 seconds, it could take 20 seconds. It's not a long process. So it is literally in the process of deploying. And yeah, apparently I changed a lot of settings to be real restrictive on this account. So once we see that deploy, then we can go and refresh and we should see your code. There we go, 9 seconds. And we broke everything.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay.
That's not my code.
Well, that is not your code. Failed to load asset mock. That's fine. Failed to load it home for some reason. And yeah, it's not liking that home. I know. Okay, that's probably that's the hashtag piece that's breaking us right now.
Fair enough.
I guarantee that's what it is. There's no doubt in my mind. I've done this enough times. So I've got to get the hash routing in. Okay. So yeah, I looked at his document, that guy's documentation. I'm like, oh, this looks really easy, really cool. Well, he didn't put any routing in. Okay, well, if we had done no routing, this would be working. Because we have routing, it's actually what it's doing is it's looking for, if you look at the console, it's looking for the /home file on this route, on this path. It's looking for that file. Okay, instead of using the actual Angular routing to realize that's where we are. If we use the hash routing, it puts that /home, that fixes it. Now I'm going to have to check a couple other things out because with the routes being part of the problem, with the hash routing being part of the problem, my guess is that base href is going to become a problem because then when I try and run it locally, it's going to be looking for a longer path, which doesn't exist. So I'm going to have to figure out why that didn't work in our build process, why that didn't update the way it should have. So I'll get those figured out. We'll chat through what I figure out and get in next time, which I think is Tuesday. Is that right? Yep, Tuesday. Okay, any questions? Fun and exciting watching it fail over and over again. That's the way these, I mean, honestly, with these YAML files, that's almost always how it goes. Saw a really cool tool 15, thought it was going to work and it didn't work the way we wanted it to. That's not a surprise. Hash route is relatively easy to implement. The pathing pattern will be relatively easy to implement. You'll see it. It'll make sense at some point. Okay. Any questions, comments, concerns? I'm going to stop the record here real soon.
Please give us sincerest apologies or appreciation to the missus for keeping you much longer than you initially wanted to.
I'll survive. We're going out for ice cream, and my 3-year-old
Oh.
will survive the 15 minutes. So
Okay,
yeah,
good.
she's been hacking and coughing all day, so she deserves a little bit of rest and soothing on the throat. All right. Okay, guys, we'll catch you in a couple of days. Let me stop this.